Alright, the first Buddyfight ride line is here, and it's the main first protagonist, being Gao Mikado, along with his buddy. So let's begin. And very interesting on how they decided to do this. So here's the starter, the Dragon World flag, and you say open the flag instead of stand up, and you become the Buddy Fighter. In which when you become the Buddy Fighter, your buddy from the ride deck goes to the order zone, and throughout the rest of the fight you can only play Buddy Fight, Dragon World cards, and or generics, kinda to replicate the Buddy Fight rulings with the flags. And then before we continue with the ride line, here's the crest, and no energy generator cannot be used with this. So just like any other crest, it goes to the crest zone, but when you ride on top of the flag goes in the crest zone along with it. But then here's the different part where you put the top two cards of your deck face down as gauge, which is basically a reference to the Buddy Fight ruling where before you start the game, you get 2 gauges from the top 2 cards of your deck. And then the other skill is that auto, when this card's put in the crest zone, or if it's the beginning of the ride phase, put a card face down from your hand to the gauge and draw a card. Once again, referencing Buddy Fight's ruling where you basically do a charge and draw, which actually might be powerful in Vanguard because this is more draw power with drive check and filtering out technically. But anyway, the last part is the Buddy Call. Act once per fight. If your Vanguard's at least grade 3, choose a Buddy monster from your order zone and call it to rear guard and then counter charge 1. This is basically the Buddy gift. Would have been funny if you actually heal 1 point instead, but I guess that's too OP, so I will take the counter charge. Overall, cool, unique crest that just basically plays like regular Buddy Fight. And hopefully they make more crests in the future, not just the energy generator. And this is how it should be displayed when you're in your grade 1 ride. Your flag under the crest with your buddy next to it. And now to the grade 1 wiki power, Ivo Academy Gao Mikado, which has the skill of auto. When placed by riding on top of Dragon World, perform one of the followings. Look at top 7 cards of your deck for 1 armor dragon or 1 item from among them and put to your hand, of course, shuffle your deck, or search your deck for 1 Sun Fist Sunshine Impact, which is the arm card, and arm it to this unit without paying the cost, and of course shuffle your deck. It's basically like Basagra, so when you ride on top of it, if it meets the condition, you will keep those arm cards. But once again, typical ride line that just basically sets you up. And into the grade 2 with 10k power, Mikado style Aki Jujitsu Gao Mikado, which has a skill. Auto, when placed on Vanguard, look at top 2 cards of your deck to choose up to 1 drum or 1 item card from one, reveal it and put it to your hand, of course shuffle your deck. Typical ride line that searches, but this time for your buddy. In which we go to the grade 3 with 13k power, Mighty Sun Fighter Gao Mikado, which has a skill. Auto, Vanguard, once per turn when this card attacks, cost rest 1 of your rear guards. This unit along with that rested unit both become in the link attack state into the end of battle. Of course, this is just a reference of Buddy Fight where you can use 2 units to combine their attack, in which that in the link attack state, you are still combining their powers together. But it's actually that one main unit that is actually attacking and not the rested unit. But you do lose 1 attack here, but in technicality, thanks to the second skill where Auto Vanguard once per turn at the end of this unit attack, cost count boss 1, choose 1 of your rear guards in the link attack state and stand it. And then if your opponent's Vanguard's at least grade 3, choose 1 of your rear guards as drum and stand it. So basically has the ability to do a link attack, and thanks to your second skill, your link attack unit gets to re-stand back, so at least that you get that 1 attack again. But if you do an attack with drum, well, drum gets an additional attack. So in a way, it's a ready for attack deck. But this link attack is going to be important because of course it's Buddy Fight, and fighting with your buddy is going to be very important. In which the last skill, which is My Buddy, which is the type of skill, act Vanguard once per turn, cost soul blast 1, search your deck or drop zone for 1 drum bunker dragon and call it to rear guard, with the reduced cost of the original act ability by 1 gauge into the end of turn. But if you search your deck, of course shuffle it. This is just a way to get your buddy, of course, especially since drum is definitely going to be the most important rear guard in the deck. Overall, not much to say here because you, the fighter, is just going to do the support stuff, while your main rearguard unit is going to do everything else, which is definitely how I see in Buddy Fight anyway. And here's how the ride deck's going to look like, which is going to consist of 6 cards, which includes the ride line from 0 to 3, with the crest with being 5th and the buddy being the 6th. And now to the item card, which is a normal order weapon, Sun Fist Sunshine Impact, which you arm it on your Vanguard, and you can only have 1 Buddy Fight item on your Vanguard, so you play it by paying 1 gauge, in which it has a skill. Count Vanguard during your turn, your Vanguard gets plus 5k power, and if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Gao, all your front row units that are drum gets plus 5k power. Pretty nice, but the second skill is Auto Vanguard once per turn. When your Vanguard attacks at least a grade 3 or greater unit, and your buddy monster is a rear guard in a link attack state, cost discard a copy of itself from your hand, and then until the end of the battle, power becomes infinity and crit plus 1 at the end of battle. Basically, it's the reference to the original where when it's a link attack with your buddy, you could just destroy anything. So basically, it's also the reference of PG or die. Personally, I don't like the infinite part because the infinite part will just be hard to guard, especially if you do not have a PG. But the extra crit just add extra pressure to it, so that might be very pressuring for you to actually have the PG in hand to make sure you can block it. But I do like the reference here. And now it's time to Buddy Call Drum Bunker Dragon, which is a grade 2 with 10k power, and the call cost is pay 1 gauge and put the top card of your deck into the Buddy's soul. Remember, similar to the OverDress style, just instead you call and then you soul charge on the rear guard. In which has a skill, act rear guard cost, pay 1 gauge, search your deck or drop soul for one unit that is drum with a different card name from this unit, and call it on top of this one without paying the call costs, which will make this card the new soul for the new unit, and if you search your deck, of course shuffle it. Funny that this is a similar skill to Jackknife and the original Drum Bunker Dragon never had, but it is nice that it could become a new different form, which you're going to definitely have a lot of. In which the next skill is count. If your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, your unit with drum that has this unit in its buddy soul, basically the unit that is going to be on top of it, gets plus 5k power and 5k shield, active on your opponent's turn as well. And also has the soul guard ability, which is when the rear guard would leave the field, you put the buddy soul to the drop zone instead. Glad that they brought back the soul guard in a way for rear guard protection, but considering that Buddyfight is heavily revolved around the buddies, it kind of makes sense. And basically this is a stepping point of where you're supposed to start anyway, because essentially you're riding on rear guard as well. And then we go to Thunder Knight's Drum Bunker Dragon, which is grade 2 with 10 power on this coast. Call cost is pay 1 gauge, and then you either put the top card of your deck or the drop to the buddy soul, which of course has the last skill of the soul guard ability and has the main skill where auto, when this card is moved to rear guard to guardian into the end of the battle, plus 5k shield, an additional 5k shield for each unit's buddy soul. So by default, it's already getting plus 10k shield because of the buddy call part, and if you use any other condition with extra drum skill, it could get even more, which is overall not too bad for extra defensive value. But the other skill is auto rear guard once per turn, when this card either attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, or becomes in a link attack state, plus 5k power in the end turn. So it's a big beater that also has good defensive shield. Obviously, you're protecting the fighter Gao. And then we go to Crimson Ballad Drum Bunker Dragon, which is a grade 2 with 10k power, with the call cost of 1 gauge, and put the top card or a card from drop to the buddy's soul, which means it has a soul guard ability, and its only skill is auto rear guard once per turn when this card attacks or becomes in link attack state, and if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Gao, this card gets crit plus 1 in the end turn. Considering that this one is a more fighter drum and the other one is more defensive, this extra crit pressure does help, although it doesn't really get power on its own. But rearguard crit pressure is always pretty nice, especially with Drum Bunker Dragon's regular skill giving it extra power. And then Blue Sky Knight's Drum Bunker Dragon, which is grade 2 with 10 power, and the call cost is of course 1 gauge, and either put the top or the drop zone card to the buddy's soul with soul guard, and has the skill auto if your Vanguard is the Mighty Sunfighter Gao. This card's reduced cost is by 1 counterblast, and when placed on rearguard, cost counterblast 1 to draw. Draw power is always very nice with the second skill. Auto rearguard once per turn, when this card attacks at least a grade 3 Vanguard, you can either soul charge 1 or put the top card face down as gauge. The deck so far doesn't really use soul, so that's not an issue, but the extra gauge charge is just very helpful because you're having a lot of call costs that requires gauges. And then to Drum's ultimate form of Season 1, Ultimate Neo Dragon, Drum the Future, which is a grade 3 with 13k power, and the call cost is 2 gauges. This time with no soul guard or any of that, but it has the skill of count rearguard during your turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, this card gets us 10k power. Pretty nice here. With the second skill, auto rearguard once per turn, when this unit becomes in a link attack state, and if you have at least 4 damage, or you persona ride during turn, this card gets this skill in the end turn. Auto rearguard once per turn, when this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate auto abilities into the end of the battle, and then cost counterblast 1 into the end of battle. It gets drive checks with a drive -1. Reference to the original Drum the Future, where it basically finishes off the game and it can nullify basically auto abilities during battle, aka the counter spells that actually nullify attacks. Overall, pretty decent finisher since this one does give you drive checks. Feels like Wabilius right here actually, because it does require you to be at least 4 damage at least, or persona ride, and a free 10k power buff. But if anything, this is just the main rearguard finisher. And into Drum Season 2 form, 5th Omni Dragon Lord Drum, which is great too. With 10k power, and the skill is call cards as 1 gauge and put the top card or drop zone card into the buddy's soul, which makes it have soul guard. And the skill is auto rearguard once per turn. When this card attacks at least a grade 3 Vanguard, cost pay 1 gauge, and then choose one of your opponent's front row rearguards and retire. And this card gives us 10k power, which is basically a reference to the original 5th Omni Lord Drum, because that one retires something on call. In which the second skill is auto front row rearguard once per turn. If you damage check a card, and if your Vanguard is at least a grade 3 Gao, and you do not have a same rearguard as this unit, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discard it. Probably a reference of Drum countering Yamigeto here, but I actually find this skill kind of awesome because it kind of counters your opponent a bit. The more you get damaged, the more they lose, even if it is a once per turn thing, but making your opponent lose a card can actually be a big deal. And also it gives you retire fodder here. And then we go to Drum Bunker Dragon SD, which is basically the chibi version of him, which is a grade 1 with 8 power, and this goes auto drop. When your rear guard with Drum with a different card name is placed, cost soul blast 1, perform one of the following. Put this card into the buddy's soul, or call this to rear guard in the same column as that place unit. This is so you could either get a booster or just another soul guard, basically. Regardless, this is just a must run because it just helps Drum. And then to the spell, which is a normal order, Dragon Wisdom Knowledge of the 5th Omni, in which you play for free while your Vanguard is Gao, or you have a rear guard with 5th Omni. You bind this card and then put the top card of your deck face down as gauge, and then you draw a card. Once again, more gauge charges, which is always very nice, and more draw power, which is also very nice. Not only that, it's also grade 1, in which you also have the additional part where you can also play it from the drop. And then finally, here's your PG, Thunder Knight's Halberd Dragon, which I remember that being a move unit to take the hit instead of you, the fighter. And it is your typical PG that has 1 card or less for no discard. But you also have a blue Dragon Shield as a PG with no shield value on it, but it still has the PG ability, but it's not your typical one because it has the additional skill where if you have no face-up card in the damage zone, you can countercharge 1 and then remove this card. And I hope they do this for the main nations as well, because I am actually hoping for this. And now we got Buddyfight's unique trigger lineup. They're all order cards that all have 0 shield but has the ability where during the guard step you can put it in Guardian as a trigger unit that is a grade 0 with 15k shield Guardian. With the crit one being Dragon Trust, having a unique ability of paying 1 gauge to choose one of your grade 2 or less rearguards and put this card into the Buddy's soul. Dragonic Grimoire is the draw trigger and it's 5k shield instead. And if you have 4 or more damage, you can counterblast 1 to discard all cards from your hand and then draw 2 cards, just like the original one, except that the original one lets you draw 3. The front Dragon Barrier lets you put it as a gauge, and the green Dragon Shield the heal has no ability but has the additional part where auto when put in Guardian, if you have no face-up card in the damage zone, cost this card a card for your hand and countercharge 1, which I hope that they do for every nation in the main game as well. Just so far a unique way of using spells for triggers, and I hope that they put these unique skills in the main line as well. And then there's the Drago Energy Critical Trigger, which has the unique ability where you can choose one of your armor dragons and plus 3k power in the end turn, which is also a normal order, so just keep that in mind. And then here's the other set of triggers, which the front is Buddy Change, and it's your typical soul front. Buddy Help, which is the draw, which becomes the 10k shield. Damage Control, the 20k front. And Ultimate Buddy, the other crit that has a unique ability where choose one of your rearguards and put it into the Buddy's soul, and while it's at the Buddy's soul, this card gets this skill, Count Soul Guard. And that's it, it just gives a Soul Guard ability to some of your other monsters. And into the OT Future Card Buddyfight, literally. So other than the 100 million power, the additional ability is that you choose a normal order from your drop zone and put it into your hand, and then choose one of your Vanguards, it gets crit plus 1 in the end turn. And then choose a Buddy monster on your rearguard, and it gets crit plus 1 into the end turn as well. Considering that the triggers in Buddyfight are all considered normal orders, yeah, you have a lot of resources here, so that is actually pretty good. But also, double crit, which could definitely be a lot of pressure. But either way, you just have to run this in the Buddyfight decks. And now it's time to hit the final phase, and yes, you do have to say it as that's part of the condition. Gargantua Punisher, which is a normal order impact, and you do not play this card at all as a continuous skill, and you can only use this card if you do not play an impact order during this fight. So the skill is auto, hand, at the end of your turn, if your opponent's damage zone has at least 4 cards and you persona during the turn, cost counterblast 1, discard this card and pay 4 gauges, and of course say final phase. Choose one of your Vanguards and stand it, and attack your opponent with it. And yes, if you have until the end of the turn skills, it's still maintained for this extra attack. Basically, since you, the fighter, will be the Vanguard, the idea here is that you're going to be throwing that big giant sword at your opponent for that final attack. But just keep in mind this is during the end of the turn and not during the battle phase. So those battle phase abilities are not really going to be active. But overall, cool new replica of the original Gargantua Punisher basically. Just without the actual finishing off your opponent part, but more so potentially finishing off your opponent. And so that's it for the new Buddyfight first collab with Gao Mikado. What do you guys think of it? Excited to see Buddyfight back in a way, and in a way also replicating its old mechanics, which in a way already had some unique card design, so just putting it in Vanguard was actually quite interesting to me, and I actually really liked the take. I was kind of wishing that it was in its own Buddyfight nation rather than being part of the regular nations by itself, but seeing that there's a lot of trigger orders, I kind of get why. And speaking of trigger orders, part of me wants to see that as part of the regular TCG with the main nations, and some of the effect generics that we got could actually be used in probably the regular nations as well, like the part of getting some extra counter charge on the PG or the heal. But in that's all I have to say, and see you next time.